Fred Rogers was a Presbyterian minister who created and hosted the well-known children's show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, from 1968 to 2001. Every aspect of his television show was his ministry, acts of his faith and belief that he could connect with children and help teach them to identify and express feelings, and help them to make the world a better place around them. He believed that teaching children these critical emotional skills and how to be a good neighbor could bring about much-needed social change. Francois Clemens became the first Black actor to have a recurring role on a children's series when he joined the show as Officer Clemens, the singing policeman. Despite the Civil Rights Act, when Rogers' show began to air, most swimming pools and beaches were still heavily segregated. Protests and violence were happening across the country. But Mr. Rogers would commit a quiet but strong act on his show that made his feelings about it very clear. On May 9th, 1969, an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood showed Fred resting his feet in a plastic kiddie pool on a hot day, towel draped over his shoulder. As Officer Clemens walked up, he greeted the man and asked him to join, offering to share his towel. The pair sat relaxing side by side with their feet in the kiddie pool. Fred Rogers was telling the world and its children, in his quiet, simple way, what he thought of segregation. Francois Clemens would later speak of the scene. The icon Fred Rogers was not only showing my brown skin in the tub with his white skin, and as two friends, but as I was getting out of that tub, he was helping me dry my feet. That scene touched me in a way that I was not prepared for. The actor would continue his role as Officer Clemens for another 24 years. On his last episode in 1993, the two men recreated the scene, with Rogers carefully drying his friend's feet with his towel. The biblical imagery of it all did not escape Clemens, as he was drawn to thoughts of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. I am a gay Black man, and Fred washed my feet. Even small acts of faith can have great effect.
If I could tell the world just one thing, it would be we're all okay. And not to worry, 'cause worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. I won't be made useless. I won't be idle with despair. I'll gather myself around my faith, for light does the darkness most fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. Poverty stole your golden shoes, it didn't steal your laughter. And heartache came to visit me, but I knew it wasn't ever after. We'll fight, not out of spite, for someone must stand up for what is right. 'Cause where there's a man who has no voice, there I shall go singing. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. In the end, only kindness matters. In the end, only kindness matters. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. pray. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. We are never broken. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's eyes, God's hands, God's eyes, God's hands, God's eyes, God's hands.
God Gave Me a Word, a story by Amy Petrick Shaw. So I was talking with God the other day, 'cause we're cool like that. And God said, "Hey, I want you to tell people something." And I was kind of busy, so I pretended like I couldn't hear. And God poked me and said, "Hey, I'm not kidding. Pay attention. 'Cause while we're cool, we aren't that cool. And I know when I have pushed it way too far." So I put down my coffee cup and I turned around. And God said, "Let me hang a word around your neck so that everyone can see it. And you better speak it when you're out, 'cause I'll know if you don't. And it will be heavy, so heavy, on your soul." And a word was hung around my neck to take out to the people standing in the streets. A word was preached into my ear and laid into my mouth and burned into my heart until all I could see was the shape of the word, and the word was all. And the word was love. And God said, "Now get out, because you don't have all day, and that word is gonna get heavier. And you've got some work to do." So I'm taking my word out into the world. Love came down onto this green earth. Love came down and turned over the tables and set the world on its end. Love made it clear that it was the word for the poor and the brokenhearted, for the queer boy and the angry girl. Love was the word for the late-night hookers and long-haul truckers, for the heroin junkie and the runaway cutters. Love was the word for all of the screwed up and pushed over and too tired and I can't take no more. Love was the word for the HIV patient and the man with no papers. Love was the word for me and for you, for the saints and the sinners and the scramblers in between. Love came down and made a way for there to be a way. And then love said, "We are never going back. He who has ears, let him hear." Love said, "We are all part of something bigger, and if you cannot rise with us, if you cannot love with us, then you should get the hell out of the way, because we aren't going anywhere, and you are in the path. He who has ears, let him hear." Love came down for the world to know, and I'm holding out this word. So even when you and God are just like that, you can't pretend you don't know. I cannot put it down. Not for a politician spewing hatred, not for a minister vomiting out bile in the costume of a saint, not for money or for country or for kin. I'm holding my word in my mouth, because the next time I see God, I want to be able to say, you gave me a word, and I carried it just the way you asked. You gave it to me, and I took it. I showed it to everyone I met. You gave it to me, and I showed it to her, and Zer, and Z, and him. I showed it to them, and they, and those over there. I never put it down. I can never put it down. I was talking with God the other day, because we're cool like that. And God said, hey, I want you to tell people something. And I was still kind of busy, so I pretended like I couldn't hear. And God said, I'm not kidding. Pay attention. Because while we're cool, we aren't that cool. And I know when I have pushed it way too far. So I put down my coffee cup and I turned around. And then God gave me a word. And now I'm giving it to you. Start moving.
Oh, I am waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. How can I change our course? Just a lonely voice. Wish I could lose myself in all the noise. But if we all would rise, a generation proud with a mighty song, we could turn this world around. So fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Ancestors all behind, and before me every child. I bring the power of a long unbroken line. So when our time is through, I wanna know, did what we came to do for the future ones. So in our darkest days, may we all be strong and give our lives so life may go on. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide.
I spent a lot of time on my knees as a kid, building things on the garage floor, playing with matchboxes in the dirt patches of the backyard, and even helping out in the weekly family job of bundling newspapers for local people to deliver on their own routes. And of course, I spent time on my knees in church, praying, an act of supplicating myself to a God I feared would send me to hell if I didn't humble myself in that way and earnestly ask for forbearance. And that's what supplication is. As an adult, I figured out how to save my back by doing most of my work at tables and workbenches, so I'm on my knees for two things. As I garden, I submit myself to the land, not to be its servant, but to pay attention to it, to care for it. I see an act of letting go of my ego and being in relationship with the soil, the worms, the bacteria, and the other life forms that aerate and enrich the soil. I also periodically kneel down alongside folks who are in wheelchairs or other seats, people who can't get up to meet me eye to eye. During the height of the controversy over Colin Kaepernick's public protest by taking a knee during the national anthem, I demonstrated what an act of submission it is to kneel by taking a knee in the sanctuary alongside Joyce. It was an act of love. And while I would say that kneeling for Joyce and kneeling in my garden are both acts of love, they're also both acts of humility. Humility is a great thing when it's chosen. When we make a decision to do something, anything, that puts our egos aside and connects us to the oneness of all, that act can be an enormous source of strength. I think that's what Colin Kaepernick was going for. Strength by supplicating himself to the flag and the national anthem, supplicating himself to the principles they represent. Freedom and equality promised to all, but withheld from some. Kneeling has become an act of peacefully asking to have one's struggles heard and acknowledged, and acted upon by those who have the power to change the system. But to be forced to kneel is also to be humiliated, to be reduced in value. Humiliation is the exact opposite of humility. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Black Lives Matter Solidarity Vigil in Kirtland, I asked everyone present, about 200 participants, to get down on a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The amount of time a police officer knelt on the neck of George Floyd until he breathed his last. Everyone did it, and they did it by choice. Now, I have to admit, I've not seen the footage of George Floyd being killed. I know I should see it just to bear witness to the act. but it requires a kind of bravery I just don't have right now. Something about it just feels pornographic to me. Pornography to me is salacious. It's a grossly indecent depiction of a relationship intended to elicit strong emotions. My emotions are already strong. I don't need to see the suffering of another human being to engage enough to act for justice. I'm angry, and I know things have to change. I want to be part of that change. I want to use my power as a white person to be an ally for Black people whose rights have been denied for too long. In the process of all the public protests and conversation, I've been haunted by the dichotomy, though, of Colin Kaepernick being treated like a terrorist, while a man who is supposed to be a peace officer kneels to kill. Kneeling. The Arts Commission of the City of Boston, Massachusetts announced this week that it would be removing a statue known as the Emancipation Group statue, or the Freedmen's Memorial. It's located just off of Boston Common. Mayor Martin Walsh backed the decision Tuesday night and said, after engaging in public process, it's clear that residents and visitors to Boston have been uncomfortable with this statue and its reductive representation of the Black role in the abolition movement. A plaque at the base of the statue reads, "A race set free and the country at peace. Lincoln rests from his labors." It's about Lincoln and the rest he deserves, not the struggle that continues to this day to gain equality that was promised, but ultimately withheld. In a story on National Public Radio this week, one Black man shared the story of seeing the statue with his young sons. The younger of the two said to his brother, "The freed slave looks like Dad." And the older brother responded by saying, "He looks like me." For them, understandably, the formerly enslaved man supplicating himself to Lincoln didn't appear to be an act of humility. It was an act of humiliation, a depiction of slavery that reduced Black people instead of elevating them. It gave these boys the message that they were supposed to fall to their knees in gratitude to their Savior, instead of telling the stories of unimaginable strength, solidarity, and fortitude in overcoming the system that made them human chattel. Reverend Minyard Culpepper of the Pleasant Hill Baptist Church of Dorchester gathered safely with local clergy to pray and publicly call for the removal of the statue. It's coming down. Also coming down, soon presumably, is the official flag of the state of Mississippi, whose legislature announced that it would be removing the stars and bars, a smaller version of the Confederate flag, from its official state flag. The bill has passed the House and the Senate by large margins, and the governor has said that he will sign it as soon as it gets to his desk. This legislation is set up to have a commission for a new flag that will include the words, "In God We Trust," instead of the Confederate emblem. So much for separation of church and state. Now, that announcement came this week, just a couple of days before Medgar Evers would have turned 95. Medgar Evers was a World War II veteran, a civil rights activist in Mississippi, and the state's field secretary for the NAACP, where he focused his attention on ending segregation, especially at Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi, and expanding voting rights for full inclusion of Black Americans. Evers was assassinated in 1963 in Jackson, Mississippi, by a member of the White Citizens Council, which was formed to organize resistance to the integration of schools after Brown versus Board of Education. As any student of American history would expect, his murder was acquitted by an all-white jury. At the time, there were protests around the country, and while the changes afterward were small and incremental, Evers' life and death has inspired creativity in the form of music, film, and art. Evers' widow, Merle Evers Williams, speaks regularly, 57 years after his assassination, about how much he loved Mississippi, where he was born and lived his whole life, even though there was so much about its public policy and its treatment of black people that he hated and worked to change. The removal of the Confederate battle emblem from the state flag is something that Medgar and Merle Evers always dreamed of, but never thought would happen in either of their lifetimes. Removing statues and emblems that are designed to humiliate whole classes of people is a slow process. It's going to take a lot of work showing up, demanding change, following the lead of the people most affected, and listening deeply and without interruption to their stories. It may require that white allies like me humble ourselves in ways we never expected, in ways much more uncomfortable than simply kneeling. But I will do it as much as I can. I have the choice and the freedom and the responsibility to do so. This week, as we celebrate Independence Day, the day back in 1776 when the 13 original colonies declared their independence from Great Britain, a colonial power that was then in a centuries-long land grab in which they claimed dominion over the inhabitants of valuable lands, especially lands with great natural resources like gold, fur, and spices. The Continental Congress wrote and ratified the document declaring the states were free and independent, no longer subordinate to the monarch of Britain. That Congress didn't come to exist out of thin air, though. The revolution against Britain had been going on for 11 years at that point. And that day in July was still 2.5 years after the Boston Tea Party, when protesters ceremoniously threw tea into the harbor shouting, "No taxation without representation." Those protesters weren't protesting taxes. They knew they had to pay taxes to have government function. They just wanted a say in how the money was spent. And that fact was not lost on the Continental Congress as they declared independence. You have to financially support the democratic institutions that serve the common good. And so on this Independence Day, on this first Sunday of the official service of the leaders you elected last month, I'm asking you to do the most basic and spiritually uplifting act a member of a democratic community like ours can do. Give financially to support our efforts to do the work in the world that you can be proud to take part in. Please, send your check by mail to our office. And if you're new to East Shore, even if you've never visited us in person, please consider giving to support us and our community partners as we do our best to make the world more loving, more compassionate, and more just.
Can we work it out? Only time will tell. It's gonna take a lot, 'cause we've been through hell. I can't be without you. I've tried and I failed. So can we work it out? Only time will tell. Why do you keep telling me nothing? But I know all your flaws, at least they say something. Still I try to connect with you through your eyes. Your eyes. What is on your mind? I think it's time to speak. I have crossed the line, but no, not just me. I'm feeling something that goes beyond us. Us. Can we work it out? gonna take a lot, 'cause we've been through hell. I can't be without you. I've tried and I failed. So can we work it out? Yeah, only time will tell. I still want all of you and I know all your colors. And I guess 'cause of that I can think of no others. Yeah, I need you to breathe. Without you I'm lost. I'm lost, yeah. What is on your mind? I think it's time to speak. I have crossed the line, but no, not just me. I'm feeling something that goes beyond us. Us. Can we work it out? Only time will tell. It's gonna take a lot, 'cause we've been through hell. I can't be without you. I've tried and I failed. So can we work it out? Yeah, only time will tell. Ooh, only time will tell. Ooh, tell. Ooh, work it out. No, I know what is on your mind. I think it's time to speak. I have crossed the line, but no, not just me. I'm feeling something that goes beyond us. Us, us. Can we work it out? Only time will tell. It's gonna take a lot, 'cause we've been through hell. I can't be without you. I've tried and I failed. So can we work it out? Yeah, only time will tell. Ooh, only time will tell. Ooh, tell. Ooh.
Our words of benediction by Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Hush. Somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten. Calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our name. What shall we do? We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together.